and Sarah are coming too.
Yeah, I hope Jane comes on.
I had a real busy week. I talked to her earlier. You know what? I'm going to call her quickly because she was
okay.
having an unusual morning.
You can mute yourself.
Yeah.
She did.
Morning.
Grab it and- Hey, Dale and Cindy are here too. Very good, or at least Dale, I assume.
Yeah,
Cindy.
good.
No, don't worry about it, Jane. I'll
And
just tell her
Carla,
to get away.
terrific. Good to see you, Carla. So some of the committee members that I'm going to be talking
Oh,
about.
excellent. Very good.
To watch your words now, Jan.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm sure they'll help me out.
Good.
Okay.
Okay, you can get started, Jan.
Yeah, I may as well get started. My presentation is about multicultural awareness. We have a little group at the church. We've been inviting more people to join us, but nobody's really taken us up on that yet. I hope people will. Let me share my screen. And do my, whoops, wait a minute, where is that? There we go, slideshow from the beginning. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yeah, it looks good, Jan.
Yeah, okay, well, that part's good, yeah. I'm a little intimidated doing this, you know, but I'm doing it. I begin with a quote by Sonia Sanchez: "I cannot tell the truth about anything unless I confess being a student, growing and learning something new every day." And this group, and certainly I in the group, take this little quote to heart. We are learning. We want to learn. It's our faith direction that we must learn new things and be open to some new ideas. So some of the people in the group had previously worked with Reverend Sue Redfern Campbell, doing a common study on the book Waking Up White. And then several also attended the IDI workshop. It was an all-day workshop. IDI stands for Intercultural Development Inventory. And it was joint with people from Silver City and Alamogordo, with Reverend Jennifer Kwan from somewhere in California, who came and worked with us. But first, before we even met for the workshop, we had to complete an inventory, a questionnaire. And then he showed us that our church has a long way to go. Not at the very beginning, but we aren't even to the middle. We're kind of, you know, we're making our way toward good understanding, but we are not there yet. We do not in ourselves, let alone in the congregation as a whole, understand and work toward multicultural understanding. So, so that was a little disturbing. The first book that we started looking at was Waking Up White. I had previously read it. So when I saw that the group was going to be reading that, I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to join this group. Well, it woke me up to a whole lot of things. It woke me up to being white and that is an identity. You know, I mean, people, Black, Indigenous, and people of color know that they belong to a group, that they have an identity. And white people just flow through life and never think about, well, I'm white. I have an identity. It is white. And actually, I'm not real proud of that, but but that's where I am. I'm especially not proud of it, knowing that I'm directly descended from the first two governors of Massachusetts, both of whom were mean to the women in their lives, and burned witches at the stake, and did were involved in the Salem witch trials and all. So that's me. That's where I come from. So with a long line of that Puritanism, I'm a third generation UU. So of course I'm liberal, and I'm open-minded, and I have a good heart, and all of these wonderful things. Well, yeah, not really. It talked about white fragility. Why is it so difficult for white people to talk about racism? Maybe out of guilt, maybe because we know that we aren't there yet, and that we have caused harm to many people. So then we talked about the book How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi, and we spent 2 or 3 of our sessions. We meet every 2 weeks, and we met 2 or 3 of our sessions talking about how to be anti-racist. That the main point I think that I got from his book is that it's not enough to just not be racist yourself. You need to be anti-racist. You need to speak up and recognize when things are not right, and say something about it, and take some action. The book that we spent the most time with, and that I recommend for anybody who wants to do some reading in this subject, is Uprooting Racism: How White People Can Work for Racial Justice. This was happening last summer after the George Floyd murder. And so we were getting in the Black Lives Matter movement was very, very active at that time. And so we started looking at law enforcement and the racism that is so prevalent in the police departments. So we began to question, what is our police department, our sheriff's department? How are things being handled here? We had speakers come. We met with Sheriff Kim Stewart for an hour and a half. It was, we got into some pretty deep stuff with her. She was very forthcoming, and it was a good session with her. And then we met with District Judge Lisa Schultz, and that she tried to be very forthcoming, but the fact is that judges, it's against the law for judges to say anything that might make people not have great faith in our judicial system. When you take an oath of being a judge, you cannot say bad things about the judicial system. But she gave us several implications of things that we could take or not take. And one of the main things that she said is that people do not study the judicial candidates deeply enough. We don't take it seriously the way we should. That it's very important, especially the chief justices, that we know who they are. We do some investigation. We look at their backgrounds, and because they set the patterns for how justice is going to be handled in our communities. So that was very interesting. We saw that we talked about the racism is rampant in our voting patterns and voting suppression. The Electoral College itself is very racist. We talked about affirmative action. We talked about review boards for the police department, and most of us are not happy with this audit group. We would like to have a community review board that's done in, whoops, why did I get ahead of myself? Way ahead of myself. So, and now we're looking at the book, The Sum of Us, What Racism Costs Everyone and How We Can Prosper Together. This is an interesting outlook because, well, the main premise is that too many white people, or white people in general, tend to use a zero-sum approach to everything. You know, well, if I give something to someone else, I'm going to have less. And the point of the book is that, no, you're going to have more. If you give to the people who do not have, that is going to improve your life also. That, and she said that she raised the story of communities where they had community swimming pools and they were not allowing Blacks to come to the pools. Well, you know, the Blacks started to protest and, you know, were raising a stink. And so, you know what, they closed the darn pools rather than integrate. So everybody suffered, everybody lost. And we do that over and over again in a lot of the things that we do. Well, now we get to white privilege. This is from these definitions are from a group called SURGE, Standing Up for Racial Justice. And they make a distinction between white privilege and benefits. They say that privileges are the economic extras that those of us who are middle class and wealthy gain at the expense of poor and working class people of all races. That white privilege is not what we're really talking about. What we're talking about are white benefits. That these are advantages that white people gain at the expense of people of color, regardless of economic position. Even white people living in poverty still benefit from being white, and that, so they make a distinction there. Our group doesn't really make that distinction. We talk about white privilege, and I'm going to show you a little video that demonstrates white privilege, our idea of white privilege. And your wife, Allison, has white privilege. I love the video that you did together. Can we share?
Oh, I think you might have to reshare your screen.
Can you hear? Wait, can you hear?
Not
can't-
really.
Okay,
We can't see it, Jan.
Yeah, we can't see it or hear it.
Yeah.
really?
You have to
Oh, no.
reshare.
You might have to reshare it with the other tab with the other application you'd be watching it through.
Well, okay.
Can you help her as a
All right, so-
co-administrator?
Let's let me just go through kind of what they were doing. This was on the Ellen show, and this couple do dances on her show quite often. Twitch and his wife. And so anyway, she filmed Twitch and his wife, each holding up 10 fingers. And she said, if you've ever felt afraid when you were stopped by the police, put down a finger. So Twitch put down a finger. He's Black, she's white. She left her hands up. If you've ever had to tell your child about how to behave around the police, put a finger down, you know. So he was putting down all his fingers. The only time she put down a finger was when she was telling her children how to behave around the police. That's white privilege. We can walk in, we white people can walk into a store and we're not followed by people's eyes or the security guards. You know, we just go in and do our business. We don't think about it. We get waited on before people of color. We don't walk down the street and have people cross the street or clutch their purse. You know, and so that's white privilege or benefit, whatever term you want to use. What about white supremacy? I want to ask you, what is it? What does it look like? And who has it? Okay, so let me go here. I want to see the gallery. So you can unmute yourselves and tell me about white supremacy. We talk about that the UUA is trying to dismantle white supremacy. What is that?
Let me give one example, and that was, I was in Washington DC, and I was at the Metro. And I had gotten out, and then up about, a block from me, and there were taxi cabs there, and I was waiting for one. And there was a well-dressed black man, and the cab went right past him and came to me. And he had waved him down. And I said to the cab driver, well, why didn't you pick him up? I didn't trust him. We went on.
Okay, well, that's more white privilege than white supremacy, but that's a great example of what we're talking about. Anybody, white supremacy?
Well, I think that my basic idea is that, this is Dave, that white individuals are inherently superior to anybody else. And I guess that has appeared most commonly in like job recruitment or in even loan applications, if they can figure out whether you're likely to be black because your name isn't Dave, it's some more African sounding name perhaps.
Any others? Yeah, Carla.
Well, I mean, we can date this back to the days of slavery when the African enslaved people brought over from Africa were thought to be less than a white person, less human, 3/5 of a white person. So that was sort of the idea generated centuries ago behind this idea of white supremacy.
Well, let me give you a New Mexico context. In New Mexico, it wasn't much different. The thing is that when we lost the Mexican-American War, then you have the US government that came into this place and immediately wanted to change everything because they talked about us as those mongrels who lived in adobe huts. We had viable little villages that had schools. So here we have, a white government come in and say, you do not come up to our standard. And what we have to do is have to bring you there through our school system. Now, there were lynchings of Latinos, of Mexicans. And in New Mexico, there was, in New Mexico, we have our own Trail of Tears with the Navajos and the Apaches. So, there is a context of white supremacy here that really, in many ways, we did not get statehood for 60 years because of those attitudes, that we weren't up to snuff in terms of what the white supremacy government thought we should be.
Right. So what you're describing is manifest destiny, that and we can go back even farther to the doctrine of discovery, when white people, Northwestern Europeans, came to this country and took over, stole the land from the people who were already here, and said that they were anointed by God to spread the word of Christianity. And that was their doctrine of discovery, that we discovered this land, even though people were already there, but we discovered it. And so it's ours and it will be done our way. And that's probably the first taste of white supremacy, going all the way back there. And then, of course, there are the groups that try to make sure that we maintain white supremacy, the white supremacists, the terrorists, domestic terrorists. And we do have that manifest destiny that was alive and well in New Mexico, as Elisa pointed out. By the way, our group also invited Elisa to meet with us and talk with us about her experience as a Mexican American growing up in New Mexico and living throughout the United States, and how it feels to be in that position in a country that is dominated by white supremacy. The best definition that I've ever found. Oh, Dennis, did you want to chime in? You're muted.
You're muted, yeah.
There's a more recent example in my history back in Wisconsin. It was more prevalent in the 60s than it is today, but I think it still exists today. We've got white neighborhoods and black neighborhoods. And there was a resistance, but it was much stronger in the 60s and 70s than it is today. But there was a resistance from homeowners as well as realtors to sell to people of black heritage.
Right, the
And I
redlining that was going on.
Redlining, and I think you can still see that in the way our cities are laid out. That there's a lot of black low-income neighborhoods, and it's often difficult to get out of them if you're black.
Right.
I have one.
Yeah.
Back in the 60s, there's a couple in our church that they showed their house, that they were going to sell their house, and they showed it to an Indian couple, a couple from India. And then they themselves, when they were house searching, had a great deal of trouble trying to purchase a house.
A little backlash, huh?
Yeah. I mean,
Interesting.
Well, again, a New Mexico context is, Mesilla Park.
Yep.
When New Mexico State University was opened up, then we had a lot of white professors come in. They did not want to live in Old Town Las Cruces with all the Mexicans. That is the beginning of Mesilla Park. That's where all the white professors wanted to live.
Interesting.
I guess.
Another.
Yeah, Rosa.
When I was in college, I had a black.
That's okay.
I had a black sociology professor. This was in a small liberal arts college in Ohio. And fortunately, he and his wife were able to find housing that was not, they weren't forced to live in the black community. They found housing in a community of other professors. But otherwise they would have ended up in the black community. And before, I think it was probably in the late 60s that no barber would cut, there were only white barbers in that town, and they wouldn't cut a black student's hair. And so some of the black students just decided that they wouldn't get their hair cut, and they didn't go to the barbers. So, that's.
Right. Yeah, Rosa.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that I believe that, as an immigrant, when I started learning about, where all this comes from, and obviously I studied about manifest destiny, but it's the belief that certain individuals are better than everybody else, and therefore they have this sense of entitlement for everything. So as a social worker, one of the things that I was quite surprised is the studies that were done where they actually, in universities and everybody creates knowledge, and then they sell that knowledge, and then we're buying those books and buying into those, that information. But I was amazed to learn, for example, that during the 1900s, they actually created these I guess studies where they measure people's heads and bodies and give them labels stating if you have this type of head, this is what more than likely you will be somebody that will commit crime.
Right.
If you have this type of body, so the studies are there, that says, and then later on, more sophisticated came in the first DSM, where we actually label people for certain behaviors that we considered, that are not good. So those individuals that created those studies are defining who the other is. So that's why later on there was this controversy about who is doing these DSM, labels, and the majority were white individuals who actually later on, especially I think it was a few years back, where they were identifying individuals that they were homosexual or they have certain tendencies to give them a label. So as social workers, when I was working with, with Jewish services in Tucson, we agreed that it was very detrimental for us as social workers to put a label in our clients, because this label had the potential to carry them and have many problems. So we all decided that the label that we were going to use was the one that was related to adjustment issues, because everybody has adjustment issues and it was not going to be affecting them negatively. But once again, as a social worker, lots of times you are mandated to label people in certain organizations and everything. So
Well,
that's an
especially if you're a
example.
social worker as a therapist and you have to submit
Yes.
clinical diagnosis in order to get reimbursed.
And basically it's because the type of ideology or mentality is that inherently people are gonna be bad. And in order for me to charge, to cure you, to make you better, I have to give you a label. But there's, obviously that's other, kind of studies that have been done, that everybody in any given time, given the circumstances, you're gonna act in different ways. And we don't need labels for that. But I'm just
Rosa, we're going to get
this.
more into labels in a little bit when I start asking about culture. And I'd like to move on and finish up.
I just wanted to mention this as how these ideology is embedded at different levels.
Right. And it's right there. Dave,
So Jan, I'm just curious, what is the definition that your group finds the most useful?
Well, the historical definition, of course, but you see most of what you're talking about is systemic racism, systemic white superiority. Here's, let me go back to sharing my screen. Share. I have to go back. Oh dear, let's see, slideshow. From the beginning. All right, whoops, there it is. That is a definition of white supremacy. It isn't just guys in hoods with torches. It's the assumption that how white people traditionally do things is normal or right, and how others do things is weird or wrong. And the problem, this is my white supremacy. I confess to white supremacy. I do what feels comfortable. I slide through, or I always have. And now that I'm looking at this more deliberately, even though I thought I was I'm a liberal. I'm a UU. I'm third generation. How can I be a racist? How can I be supportive of white supremacy? Well, this is how. It just feels right.
Yeah.
And when somebody else does something, that's weird, or when they dress differently or they talk differently, I fall right into that. And what's really upsetting is that a lot of people of color also do this because they've been put down so much to made to feel that they are wrong somehow, and they buy into it. I've seen this a lot. And
Jen, sometimes it's that by survival, for survival purposes.
absolutely. Oh, I'm not saying that, you know, I'm just, to me, it's sad that that happens. Okay, but it does happen sometimes. And this is what we need to be, this is where we need to start. And this is where our group wants to start, with ourselves, then the congregation, then the world, you know. But we have to start with ourselves. And too many people still have that white fragility, and they're reluctant to admit that maybe I'm a racist. Me? I can't possibly be a racist.
Yeah.
You know, so we have to start with this, and that just because it feels good to me doesn't mean that doing it differently is wrong. It's just different. And as a multicultural society that we're trying to build, then we have to be comfortable with other people doing things differently. We have to enjoy it even. We need to respect it and you know, welcome it and celebrate it. Celebrate. We see that in words. We come together and from all our different places. We say it, but we don't mean it yet. And that's the point that our group is trying to make with ourselves and with you, that we have to mean it. We have to practice it. So systemic racism. Well, I couldn't show you the other video, so I probably can't show you this one either, which is unfortunate. Derek Johnson, he's president of the National NAACP, and he defines systemic racism, also called structural racism or institutional racism, as systems and structures that have procedures or processes that disadvantage African Americans. And he doesn't say, but I say, or other groups of people. You know, he was basically just looking at a black-white issue. And so I don't know why that happened. So were we in our group for quite a while. The books that we were reading, everything seemed to be just directed to blacks and how blacks can be in our group. So that's why we invited Elisa to speak with us, gave us at least a little bit of a different view. And here we are living in old Mexico, you know, so we certainly need to be looking at that. There are far more Latinx people in this area than there are African American. But systemic racism manifests itself in everything, in the police, in our healthcare, government and policy. And of course, you know, that's where I spend a lot of my time, racism.
Jan, you're muted.
I know
Yeah,
the
you're
host
muted, Jan.
muted me. I'm not sure why. Anyway,
Sorry about that. Accidentally clicked it.
okay, all right. And my microphone icon is now at the top instead of the bottom, so it took me a minute to find it. Anyway, here's another area I want to get into, if I can.
Can I say something to put everybody at ease? Is that minority people can be racist too. Everybody can be racist. And I think
Yes.
it's important to emphasize that.
Well, that's true. And of course, there's self-racism even, and we did sort of touch on that, Rosa, but you're absolutely right. That we all can be racist. And some of that is from implicit bias, that we all tend to be more comfortable among our own. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. So our group is multicultural. Well, what is culture? Okay, culture is implied in our name. What is culture? How is it defined? Does culture really exist? And what cultural group or groups do you belong to? So I'm going to stop sharing again and ask you all those questions. What is culture?
Well, this is Elisa. You know, one of the things about culture, which I find interesting, is that whites as a group in this country, what is your culture? I mean, I don't know what your culture is, but I want to know. I mean, if I'm very clear about what my culture is, and actually Rosemary and I, with a couple of other women, have created a group called the Sirenas, which is the mermaids. We've learned how to live in two worlds, but we have a strong culture that allows us to be able to live successfully in both cultures. So I'm clear about that. I'm a Chicana, and I know what that means. And I know that the food, our belief system, our music, but I'd like to know, what is white culture? I've tried, you know, if you go to a foreign country, they'll say, oh, these are the things about this culture, the music. What is white culture? I'd like to know.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Try to define that, Paul.
Yeah.
Anyway, Dave, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, as a cultural anthropologist, I would define culture as behavioral expectations that we have of one another as members of identifiable groups. And I'm using the term groups purposefully, the plural of groups, because and this relates back to Elisa's question, is that, culture is not just ethnicity. Culture is not just nationality. That it's a set of expectations and presumptions we have that we use to regulate our own behavior and to make judgments, and judgments with a lowercase j about the behaviors of others. And that these presumptions and expectations are acquired through learning and being part of various groups within the societal context that we live in.
Okay, and what is your culture?
I don't have just one culture, okay? I'm a member of several cultures. Mm-hmm. I grew up in the Rocky Mountain West. I grew up and was raised a Mormon. So there's Western American cultures, there's Mormon culture. I'm now a member of the UU, and a specific congregation within the UU, and I have certain expectations that come from that. I'm a male, and there are certain expectations that come with my maleness. I was raised in a lower middle class family, so there's class components to the cultures, again, plural, that I'm a member of. So that's
right. Very good.
That's how I would conceptualize it.
Yeah, Rosemary.
I'd like to jump in. Like Elisa says, and I relate to everything Elisa says, we're both Chicanas. I'll probably bring Rosa into it because I think we're the only Browns here today. Very proud of my culture. This is what I am. Born, raised Catholic, but I just wanted to share something. I'm very observant when I'm at an event, at a gathering. It's just natural for me because I look around to see how many other brown faces like mine are there. We had the blessing yesterday for the little pantry at UU, and there was a nice turnout, I thought, maybe 15, 20 people. I do believe I was the only Hispanic Chicana. But the lady from the university came to join us and very supportive of what we're doing, shared great information about what they are doing and how we can all collaborate. And it was her birthday. And just in unison, when she finished talking, and I think Jan mentioned something about thanking her for coming out on her birthday. And we just in unison started singing happy birthday. And I sat there and I thought, what happened to Las Mañanitas? She was Chicana, I'm Chicana. My voice is terrible. We start singing and my husband will say, Rosa, Rosa, maybe you don't want to sing too loud. That's okay. That's what I've got. But, you know, again, the culture was there and I thought, not even a mention of Las Mañanitas. I did feel a little awkward, didn't know a lot of people. I met a few people there. But when you're in a new setting, you always look around and maybe even kind of gravitate to those others that look like you and who are like you. Nobody else was there yesterday. However, not criticizing the group, very welcoming. Everyone was very nice, but you always notice. And the same thing happened to me when I joined the League of Women Voters. I wanted to join and learn, and I looked around and there might have been one or two other faces like mine. So you always, I feel, this is very personal, a bit awkward. Nobody else around you that looks like you. And that happens more and more, it seems like. But we sure are comfortable when we're among ourselves and we have our Mexican music playing and we have our Mexican food, because that's our culture, that's who we are. But not to say we don't notice what is going on around us. So the multicultural program efforts that are being done through UU are to be commended,
Yes, I wanted to compliment what Rosemary said, because personally, as an immigrant, I have a special admiration for individuals that are of Hispanic background that were born here, because they suffer an enormous amount of oppression and limitation during the most formative years of their lives. I came to this country when I was 22 years of age. Now I'm 66, so 22 in Mexico, 44 in the United States. And I remember when I was 44 that I said, oh, I can call myself Mexican American, but it is not the same, because I was never criticized for eating a burrito or for talking in Spanish or anything like that. Yeah. That doesn't mean that I didn't, felt oppressed in Mexico. Yes, as a woman, in issues of class, as a poor person, but it's totally different. So I found myself in many occasions, like I said, I have a special admiration for those that were born here and continue here, because they were affected tremendously, and the trauma sometimes is very difficult to get over. And the issue is that I seem to be very blatant when I talk about it, because I didn't have those type of issues when I was growing up. When I moved here, I was 22. My values were already set up. And I used to say when I went to UCLA, this statement in Spanish, yo no vengo a ver si puedo, sino porque puedo vengo, which means I'm not here to prove that I can, but because I can, that's why I'm here. I don't find other people that have it, but it's because the fact that I know that this was part of Mexico before, and I'm Mexican, right? So the trauma that happened with a lot of the children that are born here occur very early age, and it's very difficult to erase it. Same as the values and identity that I form in Mexico are very difficult to get rid of, because they were done on the formative time of my years. So I want you all discussing multiculturalism to be aware that there's differences between people that were born and raised here and people that are coming from.
So it's a different culture, and
Yes,
or a different background. We're still struggling with this. They're really culture, because because study is raised exactly the same. Nobody has the same
Right.
experiences as everybody else. And so we kind of have to just take people as they are.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
our terminology, multiculturalism, is not exactly accurate.
All right.
We want to
Oh,
share my
Jan,
screen again.
Jan,
Yeah.
I think the point that is coming out in this discussion is that each of us as individuals are ourselves multicultural.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
And well, that's my point. We're all multicultural.
Right. And I want to thank Rosemarie for pointing out that, you know, we didn't do the right birthday song for the occasion, for the individual.
But Jan, you did,
And that is my racism. That is my white supremacy, that I didn't even think about that. So I thank you.
Entitlement, Jen, is the entitlement part.
It's entitled. Yeah, it's entitlement. It's like, well, everybody sings happy birthday this way,
yes.
you know, and so thank you for bringing that up. And I hope that we are trying to learn. We are trying to learn and grow and be better. And we need to study this. We do not need to rely on people of color to teach us. We should be learning this ourselves, but it helps when you teach us. And we are open to learning. So I thank you for that. Let me go back to sharing my screen. Well, it should, wait a minute, it should already be there. Yeah. Okay, so we've done this one. Okay, here's another one. Beloved community.
Oh, I
You
don't
know,
think you've shared your
are you
screen.
seeing this, by the way?
No.
No.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
what?
it's not there yet.
You're not seeing it. All
You gotta
right,
share better,
let me
Jan.
there we go, share. Oh, let me go here. Okay. All right, so beloved community is a term that is used in the proposed 8th principle. Now, you know, we have our 7 principles. They should, if we really live them and look at them carefully, they should get us where we want to go. But the fact is, we've had them for a long time and we haven't gotten there. So there's this 8th principle that says that we will build beloved community. We will do what we have to do to get there. And we will look at all of these issues. But what does beloved community look like? What will be the indications if we adopt this 8th principle? What will be the indicators that we are working toward building beloved community? How will we look? How will we know if we're making progress? And are we ready for this change? Why or why not? Okay, beloved community. What will be different? What will it look like? What do you think?
It'll have a lot of color.
It'll have a lot of color, okay?
I will say it will be multi-center as opposed to uni-center, which is embracing other cultures and embedding them in every single practice that you have. And when I'm talking embedding in them is that when I came to the state, it's 48% Hispanic. You know, why is it that still there's groups that don't know any word of Spanish, don't know anything about Mexico? It's like, what's going on here? Where have they lived? Where are they? So I will say multi-center, multicultural, multi-center.
Multi-center, okay. Yeah, Carla.
A
Carla.
community that treats everyone fairly and with justice, and also that celebrates differences between people instead of dividing people, celebrates the differences and the different cultural backgrounds people bring with them.
Very
I think
nice.
people be a little bit uncomfortable. You know, if you're too comfortable, you're probably not being aware of other cultures, because that awareness will make you just a little bit uncomfortable until you see those differences and start accepting them.
Yeah.
True.
Go
Yeah.
ahead, Jane.
No, she was just a thumbs up.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I was just a thumbs up for what Rabbit just said, and I am thinking it actually will mean systems change. We talk about systemic racism. Well, that's talking about a system that keeps those
Mhm.
beliefs in place that we said define white supremacy. So if we're really building beloved community, we will be engaging in systems change. And like Rabbit says, that can be very uncomfortable, but we have to be okay with that.
Right. Okay.
I
Yeah.
wanted to mention something that in Los Angeles during the riots, it really affected us all because for the first time we were forced to talk about race. Something that we always talk among ourselves and never in public. All of a sudden, everybody that was there during the riots, 1992, we all were confronted with the fact that we have to deal with our intimidation issues or feeling shame and deal with it and open and talk openly. As a social worker, I know that one of the first ways to deal with issues is by talking about it. And I found that people that were not in Los Angeles during those times, they have so much difficulty. I love talking to people in Los Angeles because we talk about race openly with no problems. We understand that everybody in every given time, we have been oppressed and we have been oppressors as well. You
In
know,
that
there's
video
just
that
the
I wanted to
condition.
show you, the video I wanted to show you with Twitch and his wife, they did that finger thing, you know, putting the finger down for various things. But then he said that brought up a conversation between them. They had never discussed race.
Yeah.
A black man and a white woman married, and they had never really discussed race. And it brought them so
Wow.
much closer and at such a deeper level. Now, you know, I like that. So talk about race and be uncomfortable. Okay. Thank you for that. All right, let me go. Oops, I gotta share screen. Share. There we go. Okay, so I'm not sure if we're ready for this change, but we must be. I think it's our moral obligation and our faith obligation to move forward in this, that we have to give it a try. We have to begin to change. And that means everybody in the congregation is going to have to be more open and more willing to say, well, where am I in all of this? What do I need to learn? And I don't see that yet. We've had an open invitation for people to join our little study group, and nobody's taken us up on it. We're still about, well, less than a dozen people, and one who is now in Cuba and can't participate anymore. And another who's in Pennsylvania but still participates. Thank you, Carla. But
Dan,
we must move in that direction. What?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I get where people are coming from in terms of acknowledging, accepting, celebrating the uniqueness and differences that exist within our communities. What is the status of commonalities between people in our communities? I sometimes get the feeling that celebrating commonalities is almost a dirty word.
Well, in the IDI, as you'll recall, Dave, celebrating commonalities and looking for the commonness, the things that we hold in common is really pretty low down in the development toward full
Right.
beyond
But
that.
the thing of it is it seems to me that if you cannot acknowledge and celebrate what we share in common as human beings, that that is a resource for people who want to continue othering. We all love our children. We may manifest it in different ways, and culturally different ways, and culturally appropriate ways for the groups that we're members of. But we all love our children, and we want them to do well, and we want to protect them and nurture them. There's that list could go on and on and on. And it seems to me that there has to be a place where we can acknowledge that for all of our wonderful differences and uniquenesses, that we still share certain traits as human beings that need to be acknowledged, or they can be exploited by those. Marjorie Taylor Greene's, who has come out with, we want to have an America First caucus to celebrate our Anglo-Saxon values. So that's a classic example of othering people, rather than saying that that a lot of the values that Anglo-Saxons and say are unique to them are not unique to them.
Well, we all have Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and so those are our common human needs. We're all human, we know that, but we all have differences too, and we worship. Every one of us worships differently. Every one of us walks in this world differently from each other, and that's good. We are all unique, and that's good. So that's our commonality, that we are all unique, and we are all worthy, and we all have dignity. That's our commonality.
I'd like to just respond quickly to what Dave said, because one of the things that we know that great organizers do when they're trying to bring people of different colors and races together is to find one of those common concerns, like we want our children to all do well. And they get people to come around that shared value to do amazing things that changes the law, that changes the system. So there's value in also appreciating differences, but also seeing what some of the things are that we do tend to agree about as human beings, and working around those core values when we wouldn't do it otherwise, because we are different sometimes. Sometimes that happens.
But how do we define doing well? We want our children to do well. What does that mean?
Can I say something?
Yeah.
As a community organizer, it's very, very important first to discuss differences. Allow people to ventilate and to list and brainstorm everything. And once everybody pull it out, then you can discuss commonalities. But lots of times, and it's part of the dynamics of groups, that you can actually jump the hurtful, the thing that produces the pain, and go to the end. And we are not gonna get into that end unless we discuss the first one. Let me tell you, I was in the Jewish Family and Children's Services counseling for the first time, a teenager coming from Pascua Yaqui. You might not know, but it was from the Tohono Oro. Tohono Oro is a part of the reservation is in Mexico. And the first group that actually oppressed Tohono Oro were Mexicans. So here comes this teenager where I was going to be the counselor. And in the first session, I discussed with her if there was going to be a problem with our relationship, given the fact that I was from Mexico. I understood that she probably haven't read the history books about the oppression, but I also understood that grandmas have oral history where they pass out their information to from one generation to another one. So in the first session, I needed to be clear of that. Be understood that we're different,
Right.
we have different backgrounds, and if there's any problem, we can proceed. But if there's a problem, let's discuss about it.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, some
I
other
agree.
terms that we've discussed too is, that we no longer use the term minority when we're speaking about groups other than white people. We
Mhm.
use BIPOC, which stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. The reason is, of course, that white people are becoming the minority. So,
Yeah.
why would we call these groups minority or well, marginalized is true because white people do marginalize them, push them away. But minority is not appropriate. That we discuss some microaggressions and how this may, we're getting visitors to the congregation in the past when we actually met of various groups, various BIPOC, but they don't stay. Well, because we commit little microaggressions unknowingly, but we do it, and they don't see themselves as being comfortable there. We talked about the intersectionality of oppressions, that it's not just race, it's gender, it's religions, it's well, all kinds of things,
Region.
yeah, right.
Urban, rural.
Justice versus paternalistic charity, we're striving for justice, not for taking care of these poor people. Okay. So let's see, where are we at this? On being uncomfortable, as was brought up earlier. Yes, we're striving for progress, not perfection. Every one of us is going to make mistakes. I mean, it's how we learn. That's how we live. Everybody makes mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to piss somebody off. And you know what? It's okay because you're trying.
Yep.
You're trying new things. You are letting yourself be vulnerable. And you're listening and observing without judgment. That's where, we want to go. We're not judging people for their differences, but recognizing them, seeing them, listening, observing, learning. Learn to welcome cross-cultural experiences, and accept that you're going to have discomfort and maybe even embarrassment, and that's okay. And I started with a quote and I'll end with a quote. Forget the title. It's never too late to be who you might have been.
Huh.
Okay. And a year from now, you may wish you had started today. So I invite you all to start today to learn more about multiculturalism, about the 8th principle, about justice.
Well, thank you, Jan. You've done a fabulous job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan.
Nice, thank you, thank you.
On to
Thanks,
indicate
Jan. Yes.
next week,
Great
we're
job.
going to have Joanne Ferry, our representative from District 37. She's going to talk about what happened or didn't happen in the past legislative session. So it should be very interesting. She had a commentary in the paper today that was quite good about how you take care, why we should take care of our animals. I don't know if you saw it, David. Anyway, it was very good. It was very good. And also, I'm always looking for speakers for this roundtable. So if any of you have some ideas, please email me or call me. And so, because I'm looking for them for May. So please give me some ideas. Coming up with them all the time is hard. Go ahead, Rosemary.
Can I make an announcement, Paul?
Yes.
Something just came to mind. As a member of the Federation of Democratic Women, we're having a legislative roundup tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock with quite a few of the legislators. They'll have a few minutes to each speak a little bit about some of the bills that they sponsored, whether they passed or not. It might be of interest to some of you. What do you think? It's going to be a Zoom. Oh, then what I can do is I can forward the Zoom link. Who should I forward that to so they can send it out?
I don't know. I sent it out to several people already, Rosemary, several of them in our congregation, but
Okay.
I didn't do it real recently, though. Maybe they've misplaced it.
What if I was to send it?
But before we adjourn, I would like to acknowledge that Rabbit and Sarah, Jane Ash, Annette Turntine, let's see, Dale Emmert and Cindy Brace, and Carla Campbell are all members of this committee. In fact, Shirley is our chair. And how I got nominated to do this presentation, I don't know, but people who have learned to be vulnerable with one another and to be able to say, I don't know, but I want to know.
Yes, we all are.
I invite all of you to join us in that learning process.
Can I make a recommendation? Personally, I'd like to attend meetings where there's a diversity within the speakers. So we all regularly tend to invite the people that we know, that a lot of times look like us. So is it possible, Paul, in the future, when you select individuals to come and talk, that you look for that diversity in your speakers?
Oh, of course, but you gotta give me some ideas so I can do that.
We can give you some ideas. It's just that there's an example of the power that you have on being selective and the message you
I'd
send.
be very welcome to do that,
Yeah.
please.
Okay, good.
But I gotta get some ideas.
Right.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Sarah's gonna get at us if we don't get out of here. So, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good job.
Good job, good job.
Bye, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.